Okay, we've all been there, right? Facing a huge decision. Maybe it's about money, your health, or something personal, and the pressure is just on. But have you ever stopped to think about what all that stress is actually doing to your judgment? Well, it turns out there's some incredible science behind it. And today, we're going to break down exactly how stress can hijack your brain and totally change the choices you make.
So let's start with the big question. Does stress make your judgment better or worse? I mean, in those high-stakes moments, does that pressure make you sharp as a tack, or does it just push you toward making a bad call? Well, as you're about to see, the answer isn't a simple yes or no. It's actually way more complicated and fascinating than you'd think. To really get to the bottom of this, some neuroscientists went to a pretty unusual laboratory, a local fire station. And when you think about it, the setting was absolutely perfect. I mean, firefighters have days that are super relaxed, and then other days that are off the chart stressful. It's like the perfect natural experiment, right?
All right, so this brings us to the experiment itself. Let's dive into what these scientists actually did in this so-called stress test.
Okay, so the experiment was actually pretty simple. Here's how it worked. First, they asked a bunch of firefighters to guess their risk for 40 different bad things happening, like getting in a car crash. Then, the scientists gave them either good news or bad news about the actual statistical risk. And finally, they just asked the firefighters to give new estimates based on what they just learned. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? But oh man, the results were anything but.
So here's where it gets really interesting. Check this out. When the firefighters were just chillin', all relaxed, they pretty much ignored the bad news and stayed optimistic. That's a pretty normal human thing to do. But when they were stressed, whoa, they became hyper-vigilant. They just soaked up all the negative information, even for stuff that had nothing to do with being a firefighter, like the risk of credit card fraud. It was like they just couldn't shake off the bad news.
And you might be thinking, well, maybe that's just a firefighter thing. Nope. To make sure, they did the same thing in a lab with students. And get this, they told the students they had to give a surprise public speech that would be judged and then posted online for everyone to see. Yikes. And instantly, their cortisol levels shot up, their hearts started racing, and just like the firefighters, they suddenly got way better at absorbing all kinds of unrelated alarming information. Okay, so now we know what happens to our judgment when we're stressed. But the really big question is, why? Why does our brain do this? Well, it all comes down to this incredible warning system that's built right into our brains, an ancient switch that's still flipping on in our very modern world. Scientists have a name for it, the neural switch, and it's basically a survival mechanism that's literally hardwired into our DNA. The second your brain perceives a threat, any threat, click, the switch flips on. And what it does is it cranks up your brain's ability to learn from all the warnings around you. It's totally automatic, a pre-programmed response. And you can totally see the evolutionary logic here, right? For our ancestors, if everything seemed safe and sound, being optimistic was just more efficient. It saved energy. But in a dangerous environment, with hungry predators sneaking around, being hyper alert to every little warning was absolutely critical for survival. That little switch was literally a lifesaver. But here's where things get a little tricky for us modern humans. That ancient switch, it can get stuck in the on position. And that state where you're just constantly absorbing negativity and you feel like you can't turn it off, well, that state looks a lot like the biological signature of clinical anxiety and depression. So that whole system makes perfect sense for, avoiding saber-toothed tigers on the savannah. But what happens when that same ancient switch gets triggered by the dangers of our digital age? This is where our everyday phone notifications can start to feel a lot like predators. I mean, think about it. The whole nature of what a threat is has totally changed. Our brains evolved to react to things like actual famished predators. And now, that exact same intense biological reaction can be triggered by a simple phone notification. It's this huge mismatch between our ancient wiring and our modern world. And what are these modern triggers? I mean, just think about your day. It's demanding emails, it's that endless stream of text messages, it's those scary news alerts that pop up, even stressful comments on social media. Every single one of those has a potential to flip that ancient alarm switch in your brain. And look, this isn't just some wild theory. A big survey by the American Psychological Association found that, and I'm quoting here, repeatedly checking your phone is related to stress. So there it is, a direct, documented link between how we use our devices and how stressed we feel. And it's not just in your head. The impact is physical. Seriously. One study found that just using social media can trigger actual, real stress responses in your body. We're talking about your pulse getting faster, you start sweating, your pupils get bigger, the exact same things that would happen if you were face to face with a real physical threat.
Okay, so let's recap for a second. We know stress messes with our judgment, and we know our phones are a constant trigger. But there's one more crucial piece to this puzzle, the way these emotions spread from person to person. And that brings us to the contagion effect.
So get this, emotions, and especially stress, are contagious. You can literally catch feelings from other people, and you don't even have to be in the same room with them. I mean, think about it. You see a friend's post of a beautiful sunset, and it makes you more likely to feel good and post something positive yourself. But then you see a negative post, someone complaining about their coffee, and yeah, that negativity spreads just as fast. And you can probably see how this can create a huge cycle of collective fear. It goes like this. First, some big stressful event happens, like a natural disaster. Then, alarming news about it spreads like wildfire on social media. Our brains, which are already flipped into that warning mode, just start soaking up all that negativity. This amps up our own stress, which we then pass on to other people through our own posts and talks. This is a big reason why people sometimes make really irrational decisions, like canceling a trip that's nowhere near the danger, or panic selling stocks at the absolute worst time. I know. That sounds pretty grim, right? A world full of contagious anxiety, all cranked up to 11 by our phones. But there is a flip side. There is some good news here. And it's this. Positive emotions, like hope, are also contagious. They can spread from person to person just as easily as fear. And hope is an incredibly powerful thing. It doesn't just make us feel better, it actually inspires us to get up and act, to find solutions and to work together. So that really brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with. We know our brains are wired with this ancient switch, and we know we're living in a world where emotions, both good and bad, can spread in an instant. So the question really is, knowing everything you know now, what message are you going to choose to spread?